It's like when you get the record at the wrong speed. You didn't deal with that with vinyl records too much, although it did make a comeback, vinyl records. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Friday, a degenerate Friday edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubitz, who intermittently is freezing up on me here on the screen. So hopefully he's coming through okay for all of his fans. I mean, a huge following on the Morning Briefing. Appreciate all the people that have been tuning in to the various programs we've been putting out. We've mentioned this many times, Lubie, that here in South Florida, we led the league in bogus press conferences involving sports entities, franchises, individuals. But we've had several of them that stand out. First, going back into the, I guess this would have been very early 90s, late 80s. I want to say Ron Rothstein coached the Miami Heat for what, a couple of seasons before he supposedly had a realization, an epiphany, and he decided that he was about to have a nervous breakdown, supposedly. This was after working for years and years in the league. I mean, hell, this guy was working with Dennis Rodman, for God's sake. How could Ronnie Cycli and that crew, now they were horrible. They played some really lousy basketball. They were losing most of their games. I remember Ron Rothstein telling me one time when he had to put a guy named Rowinski into the ball game, who was known as RoboCop. The guy couldn't shoot a lick. He couldn't rebound. He was just a huge, strong, muscular guy that was good for setting. A white guy that was setting Rick Mahorn-type picks along the baseline. Other than that, he was completely useless. And I asked him, hey, what about when you had to throw this guy into the game? What were you thinking? He says, thinking? I wasn't thinking anything. I was looking for the exit. Just wanted to get the fuck out of there. But really enjoyed the job. The guy's still working at, 80-something years old, Louie? We have Ron Rothstein on our shows frequently, some of our other programs that we do in the video streaming world, and very much into it. So it's hard to imagine that when he was in his second or third year as a head coach of the Miami Heat, after getting a head coaching job, toiling in the league for years with Daly and all of the other coaches that he worked with, well respected as one of the defensive gurus of NBA basketball at a time where it wasn't uncommon to have a final score be like 86, 83. You know what's startling about that Last Dance thing? Not so much that Michael Jordan hated everybody that he ever came in contact with and still does. And never buries the hatchet with anybody. I mean, going on, my elementary school teacher, he said that I sucked and I couldn't do math. Oh, okay, Michael. Just take your Hall of Fame acceptance and move on, huh? You're making a lot of money. You're doing very well for yourself. You own race cars, everything. Well, why are you so bitter? But yeah, I mean, it's just so weird to think that somebody could possibly come to the conclusion that I've got my dream job and I want to leave it for some reason. And of course, this was Lou Chaffel, Shifty Chaffel, who was the general manager of the Miami Heat, somehow had a big piece of the team. That was some conversation they must have had with Ted Arison and Zev Buffman, a couple of the original owners, when they somehow ended up with the largest percentage of the team, even though they had no money, and Billy Cunningham. And sure enough, they wanted to get their friend Kevin Lockery in there as the head coach. Team wasn't doing well. So they pumped up this thing with a press conference where Ron Rothstein tells everybody that he's on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and so he's going to have to walk away from the game. Still in it, like 50 years later, but nonetheless, we were supposedly led to believe that was the truth. We've had a couple of others, Don Shula capitulating to the idea that Jimmy Johnson would be a better head coach for the Miami Dolphins than he would, which everybody knew that he was in it to try and win one more Super Bowl and make up for that Super Bowl III that he blew with the Baltimore Colts. But sure enough, we were trying to be led in that direction. They tried to lead us in that direction, that Shula really wanted this all along. And there have been many others of that nature. We talked about Stan Van Gundy here, where they tried to convince us that Stan Van Gundy, after having his dream job finally achieved, having a team that looked like it could win a championship, he woke up one day and said, you know what? I miss taking my daughter to Disney World. Yeah, it's a small world after all. Get the fuck out of here. Nobody was going to believe that. And then press conferences call attention usually when somebody does something really stupid. And you remember this guy. We used to have him on in the infant stages of the internet when you were booking only .com schminks, as we call them, as guests. And there were like a million of them out there. It's kind of like podcasting today. Is there anybody that doesn't have their own podcast, Lubie?
Not really.
My little dog is right here waiting for me to drop something on the floor in terms of breakfast. And I think even she has her own podcast. Yeah, pets have podcasts. It's incredible. But we discovered this guy way back. He was known as the acerbic Greg Doyle. I think they're one and the same. Are
Yes.
you following this controversy supposedly over the treatment of Caitlin Clark
Oh,
and the misogynist nature of the line of questioning that was put forth by one Greg Doyle, who later probably got more attention for apologizing for this, and everybody is questioning whether he was sincere. What do you think about this? Have you been following this story at all, Luby?
uh,
Where Doyle is at the press conference. He now is a columnist for the .com edition of like the Indiana Star or something. He
yeah.
used to be
He
with
is funny.
CBS Sports.
He was a national writer for a long time. When we had him
Yes.
on, he actually got pretty big, and then he had some kerfuffle, but I don't think it led to the loss of his job. But he ended up saying screw it and went back because he's from like the Indiana area, went back home and has been writing. I think it's like shoot over 10 years. It's been a long time. He's been writing for the local. He was covering Notre Dame and covering Indiana sports, whatever the hell that is. That's interesting. He's gone back on the national scene for again a kerfuffle.
Exactly. I mean, he now Indiana finally has something that you can talk about. I mean, does anybody care about the Pacers? They may win their series over the Bucks with Antetokounmpo out. That's possible. They were kind of an interesting story earlier in the season when. How much did you miss towards the end of the regular season? The idea that none of these games counted for the play in season tournament. The, I mean, does anybody remember that concept? We're going to come back with that again next year. And that was the time that Indiana was making a little bit of noise, and the Pacers were on a roll. They were scoring like 170 points a game. So there isn't too much there. I mean, unless you want to dig up, some biographical material on Larry Bird. What are you talking about when it comes to Indiana sports, Luby? Nothing. The Colts suck. The Indiana Pacers haven't done anything since Rick Smits was running around in a pair of high top cons. And it's just not a whole lot going on. The 500 is as big as it used to be, Luby. I guess people still go. The biggest thing that happened in Indiana at the Motor Speedway was people watching the eclipse behind Nora O'Donnell of CBS. She was sitting there with the funny glasses on going, wow, look at that. Amazing. Anyway, so he starts the press conference. He's got the first question. He's like the Helen Thomas, I guess, of Indiana
Yeah.
sports. And Caitlin Clark sits down. She's with the Indiana Fever coach, whose name I have no idea what it is. And he gives Caitlin Clark one of these gestures, right? Which is what she's famous for, where she does the heart gesture to her
Okay.
family in the crowd.
Yeah.
Seems harmless enough, doesn't it, Luby? I mean, well, let's do a little cross examination here and see what the hell, little dissection, what we're talking about. Why is this such a big controversy? I'm not sure that this isn't much ado about nothing, Luby, all the way around, except that it
Uh,
now involves Caitlin Clark, who is a lightning rod for virtually anything. So Doyle goes like this, and Caitlin Clark says, "Oh, you like that?" And he says, "I would like it if you did it for me or to me." Meaning like what? I don't know. Is that some kind of sexual come on, Luby?
yeah,
What
what
do
is
you
that?
think? Is that
Seems
so
very official.
far out there? I mean, somebody shoots back an athlete. You ask a question at a press conference. Somebody shoots something back at you, like you're asking a question of Draymond Green or Belichick, and they shoot something back. Oh yeah, what about you? She wasn't even doing that. She just said, "Oh, you like that?" And he comes back and says, "Yeah, I would like it if you did it for me."
Listen,
What is? I
I
mean,
don't know what it means either way. I don't know what to do with that.
is that all that far? I mean, so he said something that sounded stupid at the time. I'm coming back at an awkward moment in the press conference, which I don't know that it should have been all that awkward. What's wrong with like going ahead and doing an impression of the woman's gesture that she does all the time on the court?
I,
Kind of like saying, "Hey, welcome to the Indiana Fever." I could see that a million different ways. Anyway, it blew up that this was the most misogynist,
that was
sexist, ugly
misogynist.
treatment of an athlete in the history of press conferences, Libby.
Oh, get out of here. I don't know what it is. It feels awkward and weird, but it doesn't feel misogynistic. I just don't know what. I don't know what he was getting at. Like, what was he? Did he want to take a video of her doing it for his kids?
I don't
Because I mean,
know.
she has kids.
Seems bizarre that this became such a
Is he
huge
allowed?
story. And then he's making more news, and people are condemning this Greg Doyle guy, who didn't seem like a bad guy, did he,
No, he
Luby?
was.
I mean,
No, I
seemed like
liked
a
him.
decent guy. He
Was
was,
he?
go
Was
ahead.
he able to explain it? Like, I don't get it. I was able to go. My daughter's a big fan of yours, and there's a huge moment for this. Like, was he able, or they just moved on to the? Because a lot of the time they move on quickly. I don't
Total
like.
condemnation, Louis.
They
Total
just
condemnation. I
just
mean,
gave him the
cancel
look.
culture with this guy.
Okay, I don't
So
know.
he later published an apology. He wrote a whole column, an apology, and,
Yeah.
the assertion was that he only did that so he could get more clicks. That he's just a low life,
Did he
low level
explain it
scumbag.
anywhere? Did even in the apology he get to explain? Like, I want to know if he explained it or not.
I didn't see any "Explain It to Me, Lucy" on there, but
I'm confused about the whole thing.
does it seem like literally? I mean, much ado about nothing, Luby. It's Shakespearean, is it not? Or am I misinterpreting this completely because I'm a misogynist pig? No, I don't think so. I normally don't like the mistreatment of people who are in a situation like that. Remember when Jimmy Calhoun had this guy dogging him who was trying to do a story about how corrupt the system is and how coaches are making millions of dollars while regular teachers are making nothing. They can't even afford to buy groceries, and how he's the highest paid guy on the state payroll. And
Yes.
he kept hounding Calhoun about this. Calhoun didn't want to do an interview for his magazine article. So he goes to a press conference after a UConn game that UConn won. And this reporter starts screaming, "Hey, how can you justify your salary, Jimmy?" And my thought on that would be that there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Yeah, that was
A time and a place for everything. We had a reporter here many years. My favorite question ever asked at any press conference was when this guy, he used to be one of those guys who was very aggressive at press conferences. I tend to lay back. Do you ask questions at press conferences? I usually say
try to
nothing.
ask at least one. If whenever I've been to a press conference, if I'm there, it's very boring. So I try to at least ask one question to keep myself engaged. Otherwise, I feel bored. But I'm not the first. I'm not the last. If I've been the ones where I don't ask questions, I'm not mad at myself or what the process. I think it's weird when you get the same people ask not only one, but they always start with like 3 or 4 questions. Like, dude, like, get your question and get the fuck out.
Yeah. I mean, there have been many famous responses that have come to what seem like innocuous questions also over the years, including our guy, may he rest in peace, Sekou Smith, who was the guy that asked Popovich about the Jean Pachula incident, and he went nuts with a famous diatribe. And you're thinking, wow, I happened to be there when Tommy Lasorda was asked the question by a guy named Greg Oldham. He's in the locker room. Nobody's saying anything. Finally, this guy, Greg Olden was the guy's name. Finally, a guy pops up and says, "Hey, Tommy, what do you think about Kingman's performance tonight?"
Like
just to get him to say something. And he went nuts. Kingman's performance. What the fuck you think? Like that? Your guy hit 3 fucking home runs. He went crazy on that. But my favorite was a guy. There was a reporter here named Al Lombardo, a kind of obscure guy in Miami. Was not part of what you would say was mainstream media. He worked for some rinky-dink radio station that nobody could hear outside of the parking lot. But he was always very assertive. And he asked Don Shula after a game against the Jets, which Miami had prevailed by like 2 points. They were favored by 3. And he first question to Don Shula after this big victory for the Miami Dolphins was, "Hey, Don, can you really be satisfied with a win, no cover?" I don't even know if Shula knew the terminology, guys. I mean, he was that straight-laced. I'm sure he had heard about betting terminology. It wasn't nearly as popular, widely recognized and acknowledged as it is today. But yeah, that was a good one. He was escorted out of there. But the Doyle thing, I don't know that I see. I mean, what am I missing here, Lubie? The guy probably just fumbled his way through a response to Caitlin Clark, who he wasn't expecting to say, "Oh, you like that?" And then he felt compelled to say something back. I don't think he meant to insult her. Do you, Lubie? I mean, what is that?
I don't think he meant to do anything. I think the whole interchange is weird. I mean, that's the heart symbol, and people do it all the time. She's not the only one that does it. I don't know what he was doing with doing it. I don't understand his response, but I don't think he's being misogynistic. I just don't get. I don't get any of it at all.
It's the headline on every story. I mean, never mind that Israel has bombed Iran or that Trump is on trial in New York. The first story up is, "Oh, can you believe this? This guy," and not to defend Greg Doyle. We happen to know him. I thought he was a pretty good guy. Maybe he is a creep. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. No. But
he pushes the limits. He's very honest, and he pushes the limits, and he doesn't follow all the norms. But he's never had any issues like that. Like never, like.
Yeah, hopefully people will get past that. All right, what do we get past the Chicago Bulls? I say we because we're here in Miami with the Miami Heat. They've been a sore subject most of the year. I'm inclined to take both road teams in the games tonight, Lubie. You are getting 1.5 with the Chicago Bulls over a Jimmy Butlerless Miami Heat team. The Heat also likely without Terry Rozier, who was a real constant force for them offensively in the second half of the season after his acquisition. And Duncan Robinson, their 3-point sharpshooter, who had a pretty good year overall, has been in and out of the lineup, and was out of the lineup in this last game, did not play. That was not a coach's decision. So he would also
he's
have to
hurt.
be with a giant question mark, no?
Yeah, he's hurt.
Do the Heat have enough firepower to beat the Chicago Bulls, who you normally, if you just looked at that on the surface, Heat versus Bulls, Heat laying 1.5, your first inclination would be to say, sure, yeah, at home they beat the Bulls by 1.5 points. But what do you think? They were on the ropes last year against the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls may be a little bit better this year than they were a year ago, and the Heat certainly have been in decline from the position they had a year ago. I mean, what a run they had, right? They mowed through Milwaukee, the New York Knicks, and then the Boston Celtics before actually being halfway competitive against the Denver Nuggets team that was blowing people out of the water in the NBA Finals. But it does not seem it's hard to recapture that magic, is it not, Lubie? Without
Well,
making
no,
some significant changes.
you don't have Butler. I mean, Butler was healthy and was the best player in the playoffs until he got hurt last year. And then even when he was hurt, he was able to play through it and wasn't the same guy, but was still a viable player and really helped carry them to the finals. He's not playing at all. So I already didn't think they were going to pass the Celtics with Butler because, again, Butler hasn't been that guy anyways. Now without him, I don't see them doing anything. But I think they get past the Bulls. I really feel like, look, Levine's not playing. Your guy Caruso is either not playing or not himself.
Yes.
The difference for the Heat is they actually do have a lot of guys that now have experience and have been there before. And Hero has the chip on his shoulder, right? Hero was the one that wasn't there in the finals. Hero's the one that's struggled time and time again in the playoffs. Bam, same thing. It's now their time. To me, the Heat have more talent. The Heat are the better team, even without Butler. They are at home. I think they win this game, and I think they lose to the Celtics in 5. I think they find a way to get a game versus Celtics, and then they lose in 5. That's what.
Well, they won't have Butler against the Celtics either. He's going to be out for weeks.
That's why I think they have no shot versus the Celtics. But they can. I can see them getting a game. They'll have home games. The Celtics are weird with them. They play the Celtics well. I think you'd get Rozier and Robinson back for that series. So I think they'd get a game versus Celtics and lose in 5.
Oh, wait a minute here. I'm getting a text from Jonte Porter. He says, no, go ahead. Play the Bulls. But all of his boys are on the Bulls. Actually, a picture of a hot chick just showed up. I probably shouldn't show it here to the general public. And the Kings going to New Orleans to take on a Zionless Pelicans team.
That sucks.
And the Kings are favored by 1.5. You would have to think Sabonis has a field day there without Zion Williamson in the lineup. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Sacramento Kings, who we thought were going to lose to Golden State. They beat them by 50. And I would imagine Brandon Ingram really struggled in that last game. I would imagine that he comes back a little bit and has a much better outing this time for the New Orleans Pelicans, especially since he has to make up for no Zion. But the Kings are a good team, a decent team out of the West there. It was highly competitive there at the bottom. You have a lot of parity in the NBA. Aside from the Celtics running away with the East, I mean, look what was happening in terms of juxtaposition for playoff positioning all the way down to the final day where the Knicks ended up as the number 2 seed in the East. And you had the Oklahoma City Thunder eclipse the Denver Nuggets, giving them the possibility of a home court advantage if those two teams, the 1 and 2 seeds, end up meeting for the Western Conference Championship. But the play-in games are tonight. We'll have the field finally set. I'm going to say road teams in both games. Lubie, you disagree? You think the Heat have enough? They have the goods to go ahead and beat a very disappointing Chicago Bulls team for the last several years. But
and again, they have no Levine. So, the Heat don't have Butler. They don't have Levine. So, I think that evens it out, and the Heat are at home. And I think they were horrendous versus Sixers. I presume Hero and Bam will be much more of a factor in this game. We'll see.
Beware Kobe White, right?
Kobe White played out of his mind, He played out of his mind.
He has really come on for the Chicago Bulls, a team that we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to because they no longer have Michael Jordan. That's it. They don't even have Scotty to rip. All right, and the NHL playoffs get underway as well. You got the opening round coming up. Gets underway tomorrow. The local team here, the Florida Panthers, who were very good throughout most of the regular season, kind of tailed off a little bit at the end, but nonetheless still figured to be a prominent factor. Once again, they went to the finals last year before they were so busted up, Lubie. I mean, you talk about Quasimodo City, and nobody could straighten up their back there on the Florida Panthers roster. Guys were playing with broken backs. I mean, this NHL is something, huh? It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the weak. It's not for somebody that you would consider to be, can I use a term like wuss?
No.
Yeah. Not for the guys that are going to kind of complain that, I got a little bit of pain in my ankle. I think I won't play tonight. That's not happening. No load management in the NHL. You just don't see that. They all have a large burden on their shoulders, and they're willing to go ahead and do whatever it takes to go out there and win a series. But the Panthers rather, and the Lightning. This is the
That's
only
fine.
in-state rivalry in sports in Florida that has any kind of zest to it whatsoever. Nobody cares about playing. The Dolphins don't care about playing Jacksonville or Tampa
No,
Bay.
not on the pro level. The pro-
Orlando never. I mean, that's not even a real city. The Heat are down here on South Beach, and the other guys are going to some, place where they're singing all day. Yeah, it's a small world after all. Get the fuck out of here. That's not even a real city. Orlando. There's no beach.
The Rays and Marlins have nothing. There's no animosity at all with that thing.
No, I mean we got their guy now, and he's buried the Miami Marlins completely. They're worse than they've ever been, even in their expansion year. It's incredible.
Honest.
Where's Dave Magadan when you need him? So this is the only rivalry, though, that has any steam to it, any a kind of depth to it. The Lightning and the Panthers genuinely don't care for each other, and it's been a big deal. The two teams when they do battle, and they've been in playoff battles in the past, and all kinds of ugliness during the regular season. So should be very exciting. Do you see the Panthers surviving this opening round series?
It's annoying because look, the Lightning aren't the team that they were, but it's not like they fell off. It's just their conference is ridiculous. So like the Lightning actually did still have a good year. Kucherov, I think, led the league in scoring, or was right.
He was phenomenal this year.
So it's not like they're bad. So the Panthers have their look. Yes, they had the President's Trophy 2 years ago, but this team's better. I mean, this is a team that's coming off a Stanley Cup and actually got better. It's annoying that they have to face them, but I guess look, if they're gonna go and win a cup, you got to get over the hump. I think they'll win the series. It's just fucking annoying that they have to face
there are no soft spots, though. It doesn't seem like. I mean, you have many good teams in both conferences this year. I know you like the Vancouver Canucks, even though you probably haven't seen a single Canucks game.
They just have a lot of points. They were either leading or second in points. I don't know anyone on their team.
Is Pavel Bure still with them?
I don't know if the Sedins are still there. Like I don't know who's on Vancouver.
Big Country? No, that was the Grizzlies. He was.
Good job by you. Yes.
All right, so we'll have a lot more in-depth analysis on that in the coming weeks. There's no doubt you'll want to turn to us for your NHL inside information. Louis turns into a veritable Don Cherry once the playoffs come around, and me, I'll just bullshit my way through it. But like you guys have come to recognize, we do here every day. We're not trying to fool anybody. We'll leave you with this, right? Just make the heart. And if you make it at us, we'll be very happy about that. Thank you very much for loving the programming here. That's going to do it. Good luck with all your wagers over the weekend, everybody. For Mike Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in a Degenerate Friday edition of the Morning Briefing.